Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, we are back. Mission Whitetail, 1 year anniversary. Can you believe it's been a year?
No, man, it's been flying by. This and work and little guy.
It's been quite a year, old boy. Cheers.
Heck
yeah,
yeah.
1 year in, man, and lots of feedback, really good stuff. Analytics-wise, we've had over 48,000 downloads between all the different platforms. Who would have thought two rednecks? Well, one redneck, yeah, hillbilly, one redneck and one hillbilly from South Carolina would get that kind of traction. So I think a lot of it is the guests that we've had. You know, we've had some good quality guys on. You know, it's been a lot of fun doing this, learned a ton, been able to pick the brains of some of the best whitetail hunters on the planet. I will say here in South Carolina, switching gears a little bit, it's gotten cold.
Yeah, cold and pollen every freaking where.
I read something today that said, you know, it's going to be a hot summer when we get dusted with pollen and then put back in the refrigerator for a week or two. So I'm sure it's going to be 100 in no time.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. Them mesquites are going to be something fierce.
Yes, they are. But back to the 1 year anniversary, man, I think what our plan is to do the kind of the highlights.
Yeah,
I know you've been working on that. We are actually, the podcast is going to drop tomorrow because we have been in Ohio at a trade show, and that went very well. That was it was a much smaller show than I had anticipated. I don't think there was but about 8 or 10 rows. How many?
Yeah, about 8 or 10, and it wasn't a long show. We're usually doing at least 4 days, and it was like 2.5.
Yep, it was a half day on Friday, all day Saturday, and not even a full day on Sunday.
Yeah, but we got to touch base with a lot of industry buddies and get together with them, and we did well for the days that we had available to show the stuff off.
What I have noticed, you know, with Osseo, and obviously this is not a podcast to talk about our gear and stuff, but it seems like the industry guys are now starting to pick it up and start using it, which is really rewarding to me when you get a guy that, you know, had never heard of Osseo. He's a professional. You know, he's with, say, a bow company or a stand company or trail camera company, whatever it may be, and they're coming by the booth, you know, wanting to get outfitted in Osseo, and that's super rewarding to see. And I think what's happened is guys have gotten it, started using it, and realized that it's good quality stuff, and it's got a really good camo pattern on it. And, you know, it's starting to get traction, and it's humbling and rewarding and really cool to see.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people that came by all these shows, came by the booth and were familiar with the product and the pattern already. It just goes to show you that there's some word of mouth going, and not just the advertisement. It's getting, what is it called? Organic growth.
Yes, organic growth. Yeah, and that's really good, and we've got new products coming. We're going to constantly be adding more and more stuff. We've got the new collar design coming. We're going to probably release that middle of April. New fabrics for some of the items coming. So show-wise, we've got here in Columbia, South Carolina, this weekend. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we take kind of a break and then pick it back up, I think, in Alabama or Georgia, July, August, or vice versa. Now, obviously, those will be released on the social media platforms, and then we can touch on them, you know, on the podcast before we go to Georgia. But if you're in South Carolina and you want to come by and check us out this weekend, we're in the Canny building
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. We're in one of the buildings.
Yeah,
Canny is definitely one of them.
we're in a building at the trade show in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, let's look around.
Yeah, ask for directions. Oh boy.
Oh, typical.
What say you, Kev?
Yeah, let's say you. I don't know anything. And we got the new hats.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. For you guys that aren't looking on YouTube, I am wearing the new ASIO trucker hat with the owl logo. It's a gray and black. It's kind of a light gray, pretty sharp looking. Mm-hmm. We actually got all of our hats in yesterday. We've got our all camo, that really lightweight nylon hat that everybody loved. That's going to be back in stock. The all camo trucker, the black trucker, and then this new one is pretty sweet. We've already gotten a bunch of guys commenting on it. So excited about that. Before we dive into the highlights, and I think this is going to be really cool because we're going to go back to even the SEAL Team 6 GBRS guys, Andre DeQuisto, Don Higgins, Adam Hayes, hit with everybody, Andy May, Justin Hollingsworth. Just go back through the list of A guys that we had on here. I'm sure we'll miss a couple, and no offense to anybody, but we only got an hour to do this. But before we dive into that, as always, want to try to provide value and just let guys know what we're doing right now in the season. And it's funny, the guys that are serious about it, it seems to be most everybody, including you, Cole. I'm hearing it from different places. Guys are working their butts off to find new hunting spots.
Yeah, it's been a little hard for me with the trade shows taking up some of the weekends, but as soon as we get that little break, I'm going to be wide open, and you were just up there kind of double dipping.
Don't discuss that on the air.
You weren't just up there double dipping.
No, I did. I got hooked up with a guy. I got permission on a small farm that I'm not going to jinx it, but it looks really good. And then Adam and I have got a lease, and I think we're going to add another little section of that, a little creek bottom that's by some no hunting that could be really good too. So
the Adam Hayes, is that who you're talking about?
The one and only. Oh, and I did the interview shoots for the Team 200 stuff. That was a busy day, man.
Yeah.
We got up early, worked out, then did a podcast for an hour at like 6:30 or 7 with Big Rendell, and then went to the Team 200 thing, did the interview shoot there, then came to the trade show and worked out all day, and then stayed out to like 4 a.m., I mean, it was it was a late full 24-hour day.
Yeah, full. Anyway,
so back to finding properties, guys. It's time to be doing that. You can parlay it with a turkey hunt or something. Turkey season's coming in, so if you get some time and you're wanting to find a new state to hunt, now is the time. And I picked up something funny. I've always talked about reaching out to realtors, reaching out to the feed and seed stores, the taxidermist. We've got a whole podcast on access, but I heard a new one the other day from Josh with the podcast we did up in Ohio, and he said one of his buddies, no matter where he goes out of state, he rolls into the barbershop and gets a haircut because that barber knows all of the farmers.
Yeah.
And he said there's normally in these smaller towns, these smaller rural towns, the barbershop is kind of the hangout spot for the dudes. Now, me personally, I would have maybe I could go in there for a shave.
Yeah, maybe a little trim on the beard.
Yeah, but they're not going to do much on my head.
No.
But I thought that was a really good idea. If you're going blind somewhere, but you don't need to go blind. You need to. We talk about setting goals all the time and figuring out exactly what you want to shoot, and then you devise your plan from that goal. If it's a 200, you need to be hunting where 200s come from. Mm-hmm. You need to. Like Rendell, we keep going back to him. I mean, he just up and moved from Tennessee to Iowa.
Yeah.
It was that important to him. He lived in a campground for 6 months.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's an extreme, but if your goal is a 200-inch deer, you need to be looking at figuring out places to hunt in Alberta, figuring out places to hunt in Ohio, figuring out places to hunt in Illinois and Kansas. That's where you're your best shot at that. If you're looking more 140, 150s and you're out of Florida or don't have very good spots in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina that produce that kind of deer, you might can get as close as Tennessee. You might can get as close as Kentucky. Kentucky produces some big deer, Western Kentucky. So, yeah, I can't hammer it enough, guys. The work you put in now, the last thing you want to do is roll around October and not knowing where you're going or what you're doing and have to go off somewhere blind. So I know hunting is not on a lot of guys' minds right now, but now is the time to be locking up those properties and turning over all the stones you possibly can.
Or you could be like Joe and just tag out on like the first afternoon hunting in Kansas and then not know what you're going to do after that because you tagged out so fast.
A good problem to have.
Yeah.
But that does not happen very often.
No, for sure.
I will take those every time they do happen, but normally it is a fight to the ever-loving last minute.
Especially when you drag me around with you. I'm bad luck sometimes.
No, not bad luck. It's just I think when you and I get together on a deer stand, the focus sometimes is not on the deer.
Like on a podcast?
Yes. Our hunts are sometimes derailed.
Yeah. I think our brains just get derailed in general. So what else? We got a couple tune-up hunts that we're going to go film.
Good point. Yep, we're headed April 2nd to do some axis deer or hopefully an axis deer, one of those, and maybe a couple turkeys in Texas. We're going to hunt a ranch it's one of the prettiest ranches I've ever been on. It's full of live oak trees, and obviously, Kevin, you'll be running the camera and get a lot of pictures of that, but it'd be cool to see how the Osseo does in those live oaks. It's right by the King Ranch in just a little bit north of McAllen, Texas. That's a pretty ranch. And then we're going to head up across the border to hunt a bear up north of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And, I haven't been a super passionate bear hunter. I've shot two of them, one really big one you might can see over my left shoulder. It was a big Boone and Crockett that I got with Adam Hayes. He was filming that hunt for Team 200. And since that hunt, I hadn't had the bug bite me and got invited actually to come up to this place in Saskatchewan and hunt. And the beauty of it is we're going to be able to scout for whitetail spots while we're up there.
Double dipping again.
Maximize your time. You go on the family vacation to Iowa and you to look at corn. To look at corn, and you do some speed scouting and e-scouting while you're there. What else?
We're going to be doing, once we get this trade show break, we'll be doing a bunch of testing videos again.
Those are coming. Mechanical broadheads. We're going to do
new bows,
mechanical broadheads. Look at some arrow stuff. Lot coming. Mobile setups.
Yeah.
You know what I forgot to talk about? And we'll get off of here and get into the highlights because I'm sure that's what a lot of guys are looking forward to. But Mission Whitetail update, we're going to be doing a bi-weekly video series for Mission Whitetail about, especially now that the trade shows have stopped and we've got time. So the podcast is going to launch 1 week and then the following week we're going to have a video series that launches, and basically it's going to be taking our guests, the followers, through the entire process through video of preparing for the season. Yep. Everything that we're doing that week or that time of year, we're going to document all the way up until we start hunting, and then we'll have quite a few of the hunts that'll drop on there too throughout the season. That'll be your hunts, my hunts. Some of the guys that work with Osseo gear, we'll get some of their hunting footage in and drop those hunts and do I think what will be different, instead of, for simply entertainment purposes, is really do hunt breakdowns.
Yeah.
I learned so much from those. I don't care who does them. It is so, it opens your eyes how guys got it done on particular deer, and when they can walk you through the entire process, you know, from on that hunt breakdown, it really, really educates me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who shoots it or where they shoot it. If they've spent the time, you know, something that's not pot luck, but hey, I went in and tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. I ended up setting up over here, and you know, he came by on a northwest wind, which he always walked on that wind. Whatever. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals.
Yeah, there's always something to gather from those hunt breakdowns, or just stories that we hear from guys at these shows. I'm always trying to, like Andre said, Andre DeQuisto, it doesn't matter who you are. He's listening and he's trying to gather something, just the smallest piece of information he can put in his playbook to help him out.
One more nugget, one more feather to put in your cap. Well, I think that'll transition us over, man, to the highlights. Guys, once again, thank y'all so much. 1 year in, over 40,000 downloads, an incredible year. We're humbled. We're appreciative. We'll do a bunch more Q&As coming up this year. I think the video series with Mission Whitetail is going to be neat.
Yeah.
You're going to be, well, I guess we ought to talk about your new position with Osseo real quick too.
Yeah.
Kevin's Cole, who some of y'all have met on the road, will be taking over kind of the operations, the day-to-day of Osseo, the customer service side of it. Kevin's going to be transitioning more into content creation. I think you're excited about that.
Yeah, that's kind of more my speed there.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really excited. I'll hopefully be able to get out a little bit more and get some of my own content for this, you know, every other week kind of show that we're doing. And yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun just showing kind of like the day-to-day Mission Whitetail process.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it is, right? We're on a mission for these big whitetail deer, and you know, we're not going to get away from that. You know, we're going to keep staying the course, and you know, sponsor free, and everything we bring is authentic and real, and try not to cloud anything with those outside forces pushing on us. And yeah, guys, thank you again. We greatly appreciate it, and any feedback, hit us up. Instagram handles again, Joe Miles Hunting, Kevin B. Hunting, Mission Whitetail is just that, and then OsseoGear.com is our website. Without further ado, here come the highlights. We sit down with the guys from GBRS Group, and guys, if y'all don't know who they are, you need to look them up. These are some of the baddest dudes on the planet. They're medically retired SEAL Team 6 operators and just incredible guys with a wealth of knowledge. Just from a daily perspective on whatever you're doing, that's what was just, it blew me away. And I think the first time I came up was in July. Whitetail season started in August, and I caught myself numerous times saying, you know, no, this is the way that needs to be done. You know, whether it was cutting a limb down or you know, getting fresh batteries for a trail camera, changing arrows out, whatever it may be. And I had my best whitetail season ever. Now, you know, there's obviously some luck that played into that, but I was super disciplined this year and really paid attention and upped my game. And so I saw, I mean, obviously it's apples and oranges, what you guys, you know, did do as far as the military and going after, you know, highly dangerous people. But the mindset and the way you approach things is very parallel to what we do at a high level of bow hunting. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things I heard you mention a couple of times that I think you learned from them was mission planning, right? Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you kind of, and how did you get that from these guys when you were up here?
Yeah, you know, so mission planning for whitetail is when you get to a level where you're really after the top tier deer, you have to have a plan. You just can't go out there and haphazardly go into the woods and think it's going to, you know, come together. I mean, you've got to have a plan from trail cameras, how you're going to get in the woods, where you're going to hang your stand. I mean, it goes endless. And, you know, you said to me, you need to get mission planning for whitetail. That's what we can help you with from a mindset perspective.
Well, I mean, you know, you're already doing it at a super high level. I mean, these hunts you do, I mean, that's world-class expedition style stuff. So, you already do it. But a lot of people don't have a formula or a metric to transfer it to the next guy. Like, I'm just super successful because I'm OCD about everything I do. But sometimes you forget the things you do naturally. Like, I have to tell this dude all the time. Like, we'll be teaching something and he's ambidextrous and he forgets that no one else can do that. Like, you're doing it so fast, you have to slow it down and really show them because you can do it both hands. Like the normal person can. And he makes it look so effortless. I'm like, you don't realize how hard that is what you're doing. Like the details you go in with the hunt, we kind of back it up like, I want to be in this position, covering this swath at this time, and we back up the entire timeline. Well, how long does it take me to get from my house to the point where I exit my vehicle? Well, 45 minutes. Well, now it's school on a Thursday. Now I've got school bus traffic. So now it's going to be an hour. Because if you miss it by 30 minutes, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, it's that planning. Like, amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. Like, you didn't equate that 15 minutes because you're out of fucking gas. Like, a pro would have known that I was at a quarter of a tank. That's an hour-long drive, and I'm going to have to stop and get gas. Well, those 15 minutes just blew out my entire season.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I've been stalking this thing for 3.5 weeks. Thanks, honey. No, I couldn't push mow the lawn right now. I have to leave. Now I've got gas scented on my shoes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, every detail, it all matters. Like, my wife washed all my hunting clothes and tied. I can't go hunting today. Like, a layman, I'd throw it on like, I'm just going to send it. We can't send it. It's not worth it today. Like, not cutting out that one limb right now. It won't be better tomorrow. It won't be better on Wednesday when he gets in your stand. It still won't be clear. Now I've got to lean over. I've got to take this random shot. And now I miss. Like, I just blew a 3-week, essentially, mission because I didn't want to spend 15 minutes. I didn't want to save it today and go home and get my saw and come back tomorrow. Do the prep work. It's like, that's what I wish I would have done my entire career. If I had a time machine, I'd go back, I'd redo it all. I'd be more detailed. I'd be more meticulous. I'd be more purposeful in everything I did. But yeah, it's like, that is the mission planning. It's all the things that you don't think really matter until you have to be there at 12:01.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a thermal shift with the wind, and there's so much. We could go down a huge rabbit hole, but that is, with your mission planning, our mission planning, it is the details. It is absolutely the details, and a lot of guys miss that. And yeah, you don't. Guys will say, why do I need to do that? I'm going out to my tower stand in my blue jeans and my white T-shirt, and that's absolutely fine. Guys do that all the time, and yeah, they get a deer here and there. But when you're going after a 7.5-year-old buck that's seen every trick in the book, if you're not doing that, you good luck. And if they would say, okay, I'm training today with my bow because I'm going to be hunting a 200-inch whitetail, a giant, an absolute record book deer. And if they took that approach, you hear it all the time. Oh, this big deer showed up on camera, on my trail camera. I need to go start shooting my bow in the backyard. I need to put some silent tape on my lock-on stand. I need to get new arrows. It's passed you by. You've got to have all that geared up. So every decision you make is you're after the 200-inch deer. Because if you take that approach, when he does show up, you're going to be ready. You're going to be in the game.
One of the things we talked about last night, like the visualization. Like, you can paint a lot with the conversation. Like, if I had never seen a deer, I'd never been to a zoo, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I really want to shoot one. Like, I really do. Like, I've seen one in a picture, but I've never seen it. By the time I actually get to that point, I'm going to be so amped up because I don't know what I don't know. I think you could solve a lot of that with super in-depth training, like all the stuff he doesn't know he needs, like to really paint it, drawing it back and anticipating the buck fever to set in, like understand what that's going to feel like, to let them know, like, your heart rate is going to be at 180, dude. It's going to be. So when it happens, don't be surprised. Like, you're not freaking out. You just settle, take a breath. Like, you can hold that bow at full drawback for 1:40 before you really start to feel fatigue. Like, you've got time. Just chill, take a breath. But as you're talking through it, every time he's burning realistic reps. Like, how many times you sat there with that thing drawn back and just, you're a pro, so you can calm yourself down, but I can't. Like, I don't know what that looks like. You've got to paint me the picture. And if you paint it really detailed, it's like I'm there. It's like you can make training so realistic that at a certain point, up until set act, like he's not going to know the difference because he's prepared for it. It's like we can shadow box for a long time. Once we start sparring, we get better and better and better. And then when game day finally comes, like you put everything together. Yeah, I think the visualization, like you see skydivers do it all the time. Like in the plane, just everything they're about to do, like eyes are closed and they're going through it in their mind. Every ounce of it, the timing, the cadence, everything. It's like visualization's a huge thing for me.
We got a really, really special guest today, Andre DeQuisto. Can you break down kind of what your approach is when actually the season comes in and you get started, when it's early season, mid-season, rut, and then post-rut? Kind of, I know this will probably take a little while, but, start with the early season and what you're doing that time of year, and then how you transition into the mid-season or pre-rut and then, finish out the season. Can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, it's going to be I'll try and make it kind of quick. So this year I tried to do, we still have whitetail addiction shows, and that what I tried to do is actually scrape hunting's a lot popular. I think a lot of guys just are keyed in on one thing of it. So I was trying to shoot a deer on a first go around scrapes, that second run of scrapes, and then actually almost got a third one done on scrapes, which are like when the rut's done and there's still a couple going in to heat. So I like experimenting with things. I like I've experimented with rattling, all different types of things. But what's worked for me all these years was a complete and utter surprise. So to start out the season, I need to know where a target buck is. And if I don't have a target buck, that's when the boots come on and when I get aggressive and I need to find a target buck. Now with the, cell cameras available, you got some private leases and pieces and other guys that'll tell you where those deer are at. That makes it an easier starting point. Early season, green fields, pecking order. I don't have any states that I hunt early enough now. One of my favorite times to hunt would be early September, bachelor groups. It's like taking candy from a baby if you have that licking branch at the property. You got the mother load of deer there that you can go after. What happens here, October 1, a lot of the leases I have in places that I hunt are October 1, and it's like a light switch that's just a couple days too late, and it's and it could be over. So then we a lot of these big bucks that I've noticed over the years, and people probably don't realize that one of the most important times for them to feed up heavy is from like opening up to the rut. And these big bucks will find a sanctuary, a piece that they're not getting disturbed, and that's all they got on their mind is just putting on a feed bag and loading up. So a lot of these green fields, if you can keep them isolated, a lot of those deer are coming out there. You don't see a huge buck put his head down for like 10 minutes, not even pick up to look around, just keep shoveling her down. So and the motto for me too is all through the season, food.
Okay.
I think a whitetail, just his whole life revolves around food. I understand it more now because my life revolves around food. So I know how it is now. No matter what's going on, food is key. Green fields, what's nice about those, you have a lot of deer, a lot of other bucks. If you go into a certain area that has that and you got some vision, you can see like all the bucks that are in that area. You know how it is, beans early. If there's any bucks anywhere, they're hitting them bean fields and they'll be in there. You can get a glimpse of them. So I like to take inventory while hunting at that time of year. And then as it starts to progress, they get a little more wound up in the scrapes. I love hunting scrapes. It's probably
You're a scrape guy for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I've seen more monsters on scrapes early October than in years past.
Now, Andre, will you throw a camera on a scrape and get his picture and then move in, or how do you handle that? You go out and you find.
Yeah, you almost got to do that now. Years ago, you sat back in old school and you just glassed these licking branches. You found where the deer are at. Now with cameras, it's almost like cheating. I mean, you got your eyes on it, and there's so many scrapes around. The worst thing you want to do is, and a lot of guys will do, is that are looking for specific deer, would be to just hunt these scrapes and waste a lot of time on scrapes that are other bucks' scrapes. So you get on them, you have a deer come through, you can kill, but it's not the one you want. So these cameras are good. Once you locate it where a buck is bedding, Normally you can figure out, the scrapes are pretty close. October, they're hitting them in the dark, so that's a little tough. So it's real touchy there. But I am probably as aggressive as you can get when it comes to hunting deer. And there'll be times in the October lull that I'm just onto all kinds of deer, lots of deer, and a lot of guys just aren't seeing shit. They're not getting close enough. These deer will spend most of their time close to food, so they're almost bedding and feeding in the same spot. They don't have a big movement. I always like to associate it to like the spokes on a wheel. The further toward that hub you are, that's where you need to be. The further out on it, the less you're going to see. And as that season progresses, that hub opens up and them deer move further, and you got that happening on your farm, you got it happening on other farms, and pretty soon it gets toward the rut, and there's just deer moving all the time. You're getting in good moon phases and everything's happening. So coming in earlier, dominant deer seem to come out of the gate hard. It's their year. They're getting their ass kicked by a bigger buck last year. Now they're old enough they can hold their own, and they come out of the gate super hard. Okay. So hard they'll get a scrape coming so early. Those are really lethal if you can find them, but obviously no does already. So these deer will gear down, they'll settle back down, and then they'll just start maintaining. And then competition plays in. If there's a lot of the same age class, phenomenal scrape hunting. If there's not, and the guy owns the whole park, he could take his time and check them at will and a little after dark. What I like is when you get about 4 good ones, big age class deer that are competing for the property, they really start trying to show each other up. So they'll be there early enough, midday, and it kind of opens that up. So we hunt those scrapes early. We get that action, and then it just goes dead. The does are starting to come in heat. You can sit those scrapes. They're reopened up, but they're just at random, and it's just it's a hit or miss type of deal.
Now, when you're hunting over the scrape, do you see a lot of the mature deer coming in a specific way? I mean, are they always trying to get downwind of the scrape before they come into it, or are they just hitting it no matter what, however they want to come in there?
That's a fallacy. I think when they're nocturnal and they're coming into them, there's a certain scenario it's like they're just lingering outside. I don't know if you ever hunted bear on baits and stuff. It's like a big bear just hanging down until dark, and they don't come in there until dark. But I've learned early on that if you're going to hunt a scrape, obviously you're going to want to anticipate where you think that deer's going to come in and have your wind right. Yeah. But you're going to want to shoot that scrape. You're going to find yourself downwind watching a deer coming from an opposite way, work a scrape and leave the other way. So whatever geographically they got to get to get to that scrape, they're going to come in and they're going to work it, And then so once the scrapes, you start getting into the pre-rut and then, into the rut, the 1st of November. I mean, for me, that's a funnel time. Everything kind of shit goes out the window, and get in the funnel and hold on and spend as much time in the tree as you can. I mean, that's always been kind of my philosophy. That's a lot of really successful hunters, even on our team, have that same. They're geared toward the rut. Funnels are huge. I don't pay as much attention to funnels. I've seen these big deer like avoid funnels. They come through, but it's such a big swatch of an area where a majority of the deer will come through those. I think the funnels are good when you have a deer that's not a resident deer, doesn't know the area, and geographically he's moving in covered ground. I feel blessed because my big deer are on my farm early through October when I like to hunt. When a rut comes, we'll have our bucks disappear for 3-4 weeks. If you don't get them before that, you're not going to see them until later season. So obviously that terrain features as it gets, they're more aggressive and they're following does. Now those does are coming through those pinch points. Them bucks, there's nothing stopping them from coming. They're coming through because they're on their asses. So it's a great time of year, and it's a very tough time of year for a guy hunting a specific animal. You need to be in that pinch point set up so anything that comes through there you can kill, and hope to hell he decides to come through there today, because there's probably 10 other pinch points around the property that same buck can go through. And because there's no rhyme or reason to that rut, wherever the doe is in heat, and then I actually started doing that, start keying and following around these does that are starting to go into heat. and that's almost like live bait for these big deer. Once they go in the heat, that's it. They're coming no matter what.
We have a super special guest today, a good buddy of mine. We have known each other for quite a while, done some hunts together. We got hooked up back in the Matthews Dominant Bucks days, way back when. We got Adam Hayes here.
Do you have like a light bulb moment that you can kind of recall where you had a successful hunt, or maybe got busted or something where you're like, okay, and kind of started putting everything together? Or was there somebody that taught you that?
Yeah, my light bulb moment was the first deer that I killed that qualified for the Ohio Big Bucks Club, which was 140 inches. I'm sure it's still 140, but I got sick of not killing anything good, and I'd read every magazine I could get my hands on. And back in the day, North American Whitetail, reading the stuff that Dick Idle wrote and the Winsel brothers really helped me understand what was going on. But it wasn't until that year that I went out in the summer, found a big deer, glassing the bean fields, and got permission, where that deer was living, focused on that deer, sat in a tree stand all July and August, watching that deer, figuring out what he was doing. And when I killed that specific animal and everything that I had done, worked. And that was the light bulb moment for me, really, focusing on a specific animal.
And that's, that's a bunch of research. You did a ton of research, like guys do today. They get on YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they do a bunch of research. But until you actually get out there and do it, make the mistakes, put the plan in place, it fails. And then it does succeed, like you say. That's where it starts to come together. Take us through your early season, pre-rut, rut, late season, kind of, I know this question's coming at you, putting you on the spot, but what is your process? You found the deer in Ohio, and let's just use that as a scenario. You found the deer, and then let's do an example like the last 200 you killed, because that's a pretty good story. You found the deer in Ohio. You're getting ready to hunt him early season. How are you going to do that? You don't get him early season. What's your plan pre-rut, rut? And you don't get him pre-rut or rut. How are you going to kill him late season? Walk through that, if you will.
Hunting specific deer, I really try to focus on early season and late season, because, when you're after a specific deer, what it's like in November. It's just next to impossible to try to pattern or predict a deer in November when they're breeding. So I really focus more on early and late. And then I try to, do a lot of my out-of-state hunting during the rut. But for here at home, it's all about early season. It's about, a lot of observation in the summer, watching these deer from observation stands, a safe distance away, figuring out how they use an area.
Break that down. Let me interrupt you. Observation stands. Explain that a little bit. Guys are going to be interested in that.
I'm just talking about getting up in a tree or at a safe distance, 200, 300, 400 yards, to where you can watch, a field, say a soybean field, and watch how these deer, the trails that they use, the winds they use to get in and out of that field safely, because they're probably going to be using the same trails with the same winds during season. So, whether I'm in my truck with a spotting scope 400 yards away or in a tree at the opposite end of the field with a good wind, watching, but observing, scouting, trying to figure out what they're doing. And, my thought process with that goes back to a article. Actually, it was a chapter in Jeff Murray's book, the Moonstruck book, when he interviewed Miles Keller, and he talked about hunting from the outside in, where he'd start as far out as he could, and just gradually work in closer and closer until he knew the exact tree he needed to be in to kill that deer. So that's my, focus and thought pattern, even in the summer, is safe distance observation until you can figure out exactly where you need to be to kill that deer before you ever go in there and hunt. Because I'm sure you've seen this, 9 times out of 10, the first time you go into a spot is going to be the best time to kill a deer, bar none. So why would you go in there until everything's perfect and you know exactly where you need to be to kill him? Because if there's one difference between me and most guys, I'd say it's that toughest part about hunting a big deer is not hunting until everything lines up. I don't think I have any, secrets about scouting that nobody else knows about or being able to read sign, but I think I'm probably more patient when it comes to actually diving into that kill spot to kill that specific animal, because I want to know right where I need to be to kill him. And then I'm going to wait until I got the deck stacked in my favor before I go in there and hunt him, unless I get daylight picture of that animal making a mistake during daylight. Like this buck I killed in Ohio last year. Killed most of my deer on the red moon. I followed the moon, have for 20 years. I mean, that's why, we bought the moon guide, because it's something to believe in. But I mean, just because it's not a red moon doesn't mean I'm sitting at home, not hunting. And this buck last year was a deer I was waiting on. Been on this farm for 4 years and hadn't shown up. And third week of October, bam, just out of nowhere, he shows up in the corner of the soybean field. Wind was terrible, moon was terrible, weather was terrible, hot. But I mean, he showed up in daylight, and I dove in the next night and killed him. You've got to have a level of aggressiveness in your hunting, style to be able to take advantage, when a big deer makes a mistake like that during daylight. I mean, you can't just sit back and hope that deer is going to come to you. Sometimes you got to go to him.
I know that Ohio, the bow season doesn't start, or the opener doesn't start till after they're hardhorned. How long of a time frame do you have before they get off that summer pattern? You got to be there, opening day, or do you have a couple weeks, or what's it looking like?
Man, it really depends on the specific deer, because I've hunted deer here at home that will be on their summer pattern, into mid to late October. And then I've had some when they shed their velvet, they're gone, disappeared. So it really depends on the specific animal. I mean, if you've got soybeans that were planted late so that they're green in October, you got a good chance of those deer sticking around in that summer pattern, especially if you got oaks close by, because there's a big shift, to acorns early season too. But yeah, it just all depends on the deer. And that's where your scouting comes in, because I talk to a lot of guys that fall into that same deal where you watch a buck do the same thing all summer long, and as soon as he sheds his velvet, he's gone, and they're just banking on that deer being there for the opener. And a lot of times what I've found that those bucks do is when they shed their velvet, they're back to their core area, and it could be 100 yards, 200 yards away, it could be 2 miles away. And that's where your scouting pays off late season, finding the core areas where these bucks live, so that when they disappear from their summer pattern, that's where they're going to go. And a great way to know when they make that shift and where they go is not only to find those core areas, but I like to establish mineral sites in those core areas and put a camera on it, because I've had more than one big deer disappear from his summer pattern, goes back to his core area, and the first thing they do is hit that mineral site. And if you got a camera there waiting for them, you know what happened to them.
I've got our good friend Don Higgins Outdoors and Real World Wildlife Products on this morning. Don, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it can be a big game changer. I've been deer hunting for about 45 years. Actually, last season was my 45th, so I'm getting ready to start my 46 years of deer hunter. And in that 46 years, the two biggest game changers that I've seen in the whole deer hunting industry or world, if you will, is trail cameras number one and food plots number two. So this can be a real game changer on a property.
That's great. Well, we're speaking of properties. I think that's a good segue into kind of part two of what I wanted to talk about with you, Don, is Kevin sitting here with me, a young hunter, he's got access to some permission spots that he can do a little bit on. He could probably do some cutting, could do a little bit of planting, but these properties are, 15, 25, 80 acres, they're small properties. And I'll put myself in that category as well. I have quite a few small properties that I can hunt that are way away from everything. From a habitat standpoint, obviously on small properties, there's a limited amount that you can do. And you have probably covered this 50,000 times with people, and I apologize, but I haven't heard, what your take is on that. What is your advice to guys that have small properties that have the ability to do some habitat improvement? I'm sure you have that answer keyed up and ready to go.
Yeah, I've heard that one a time or two.
I knew that was coming.
The big thing when you've got a small property, human intrusion becomes even more critical than it does on a bigger property, because you can't get away with anything. What you're allowed to get away with is so much less. You just can't make mistakes. So you need to make that property as thick as possible. If you've got the opportunity and you can go in there, a chainsaw is a deer hunter's best friend. If you can drop some trees and make it thick as could be, let some sunlight in, let that sunlight hit the ground and get some regeneration growing in there. And maybe there already is on a specific property, but make it as thick as you possibly can. Everybody gets wrapped up in the whole food situation, and everybody wants to plant a food plot. They think that's the magic bean, if you will, to killing big deer. And I'm a guy that owns a food plot seed company, so I'm glad everybody's out there planting food plots.
Of course.
But I'm here to tell you, when it comes to killing big deer, a food plot is way down the list of priorities. That deer, first of all, you need to be able to hunt him on the same property where he's bedding. And I tell my clients all the time, if you're hunting a deer that's bedded just one property off the property you're bedding on, your odds of killing that deer are about 10% what they are if you're on the same property, if you're hunting the property where he's bedding. And it doesn't really matter if you're hunting a big property or a small property. We need to try to get that buck that you want to kill to bed on your property. And that requires thick cover most of the time. And it also requires, without a doubt, everywhere, freedom of human intrusion. It doesn't matter if it's a 5-acre property or a 500-acre property. You can ruin it with too much human intrusion. So, I try to hunt the edges only on small properties, let the deer have the heart of it. Because if it's a small property, even if he's in the center, he's not that far from me on the edge. And sooner or later, I'm going to get my opportunity hunting the edge. If I run into the heart of the property and try to hunt him there, I got about 1 or 2 good hunts, and then boom, he's gone, and my chances are gone with him. So create some thick cover if you're allowed. When switching gears to food, one thing that you can do, even if you don't own the property, if there's any kind of ag field there at all, especially in the South, because you guys are planting your fall plots a little bit later, and typically your harvest of grain crops is a little bit earlier than the Midwest because you're planting a little bit earlier in the spring. You can go into those ag fields that are ready for harvest or have already been harvested, and you can spread things like our Southern Blend or oats or like that in that crop residue, and you can get a good food plot in an ag field that's being farmed. And the farmer typically doesn't care at all, because all you're doing is helping the field. You're putting some organic matter back in there, and before he plants next spring, he's going to come in there and he's going to spray the weeds and he's going to work the ground anyway. So whatever you plant is not going to be a big deal whatsoever.
Justin, welcome to the show, man. Let's dive in, Justin, if we can, and talk kind of some tactics and kind of your, Lone Wolf Custom Gear. Obviously, that's mobile stuff, and I know you guys are big on mobile hunting. That I won't say it's relatively new in the South, but it is. I guess it is kind of new in the South. Wouldn't you say, Kevin? I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, it's so walk us through kind of your setup, your stand, your sticks, how high you like to get, kind of how you go through your mobile setup and help some of our listeners, unpack that.
So the last couple of years, I've been running two 1.0s. I personally prefer the 1.0. That or the 0.75. A lot of guys love the 0.5. It's a little small for me, for my liking. I'm not worried about a couple extra pounds, that whatever, but my 1.0s, I've been packing the compact sticks. I typically always carry 4, with the 8ers.
On all 4 of them, you have them on all 4, 8ers on all 4?
I have, but now, right here towards the end of this season, I went to 3 compacts with 3 8ers and then a double stick. And I use my double stick as my top step.
Gotcha.
Which I like that because if I get off one side or the other, like I don't have to think too much about, climbing down or even setting up. It gives me that little extra, room up there to be able to do that kind of stuff. I kind of like that setup. I typically run 3 stands. I always have 3.
Yep.
3 mobile setups in my truck. The other one I ran was a 0.75, and I ran the 17-inch doubles with that.
4 of them, you would have 4 with that?
Yep. I always pack 4. There's a lot of guys who will pack 2 or whatever, but I don't know. I always like to have 4 because as soon as I pack 2, I'm going to get to a spot and I'm like, that's the tree, but I can't get to the cover.
Yep. I'm 100% the same way. Yep. I still pack the original Lone Wolf sticks with 8ers on the bottom too, and I take 4 of them every time I go.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to because you don't know the situation. And there's nothing worse than getting to a spot and being short of whatever it might be, you don't want to, I don't want to come back out.
You can always leave sticks laying on the ground.
Yeah. And I find myself doing that a lot of times, there's a lot of times where I was only hunting 2 sticks high.
I do think everybody's really going to want to pay close attention, probably get your notepads out. We've got Bobby Worthington. Bobby, what would you say, I guess, separates you from you obviously, grew up doing it. You've taken your hunting from, regular deer, quote unquote, if you will, regular deer to chasing the biggest deer you can find, whether it's the Midwest or there at home. What would you say is kind of the number one thing that separates you from the average, weekend warrior, if you will?
Well, passion and hard work, you got to have a real passion for it to do what it takes to kill big deer. If you don't have the passion, there ain't nobody can give it to you, and you can't give it to yourself. And hard work, and then learning how to do it. Knowledge is most people don't know the value of knowledge. Knowledge is a wonderful thing, but after you learn how to do it, there's a key element that most people miss. Other than the realization that we're accountable beings, the discovery of our own potential is the single most significant event in our lives. When you discover that you're correct and you discover your potential, that will give you confidence. And only until you have confidence in what you're doing can you proceed without wavering, without doubt, without flinching. And you'll get up in that tree when it's cold and day after day, even though you've not seen a deer. Once you have confidence and realize what you're doing, then you won't have any doubt, and you will pursue that hard, and you won't be getting down from your tree and walking around and wondering, am I doing this right? So once you reach a level and you really think about it and you realize how to hunt and then you know that that's the way to do it, then you won't waver. And that is confidence is so important. You know, I do a little whitetail consulting. I'm working with Don now, but I used to do it on my own. And every time somebody would call me wanting to pay me to go in the woods with me and learn how to hunt, of course, back in my early days, I'd done it for nothing, but it got to be quite a task. But I'd always think, now this person's been hunting for years, and we may get out here in the woods, and he may look at me at the end of the day and say, Bobby, I hunt just like you, and I select my stands the same way, and I would have picked the same trees you picked. Now, that hadn't happened so far. Everybody's been amazed at what they've learned, but that can happen. And when it does, Joe, I tell you what I want to do. I'm going to charge them double. I'm not going to apologize at all, because apparently they was doubting what they knew, or they wouldn't hire me. And I have given them the confidence to quit looking around, to quit wandering, to get in that tree and to hunt. And in deer hunting, the realization of our own potential means that we're going to spend long hours in a tree, that we'll go in every day no matter how cold it is, and that we will not doubt what we're doing. So once you have the knowledge, you've got to realize that you are correct. And it may, and while it's the reason it's so important is these big woods bucks, they may not come by your stand the first day or the second day or the third day. You may have to hunt a week straight, and you may not see but one or two deer in some of these areas I hunt. But if you've got the confidence that you are correct, you won't waver, you won't get down walking around, screw your woods up, you will keep it going, and then it's just out of nowhere. There's not a gradual build-up. Just out of nowhere he walks up and you kill him. And to me, that's the most important thing, of having confidence that what you think you know, you do know.
And I guess that, that'll lead us, I'm sure everybody that's listening right now is going, okay, well then, what would be the things to get you in the right spot? And obviously talking about it on a podcast is obviously a lot different than actually showing people how to do it. But I know you're a big funnel guy. Funnels are I think 95% of what you do is get into the tight pinch points. Is that fair to say, Bobby?
It is, Joe. I don't know how else to kill a big woods deer. I have no idea how to kill big woods deer other than pinch points. Now I do hunt sign if the timing's right, but that sign, that deer's corridor, is going to always be in a pinch point. If I'm out scouting for a good pinch point, and I find big sign, I'll travel that sign until I come to a pinch point, because I want to know where he's coming through more than once. I want to know where two or more of his corridors come together. I don't know. I mean, how else are you going to hunt them? Are you going to hunt them where they're eating acorns? Well, I mean, a big buck during the rut, he might stop by and munch on a few acorns as he's cruising, but he's not going to. That's not a destination for him. He's traveling looking for does. Now, if you're in a state where you bait, I'll have to say that that's another way you could do it. But I just don't do that. And I wish more people would learn woodsmanship and learn how to hunt using the terrain and using good woodsmanship than to wood over baiting. But let's see. I just don't understand. People say, well, I don't know where the acorns are on a given year, or they change, and I'm not sure where the buck's bedding. With the rare exception of maybe one buck, I've never known where the buck I killed was bedding. It's not like the Midwest where you can manipulate a patch of switchgrass and a patch of good thick trees, and then you've got a food plot adjacent to it. Those bucks will bed on points, and they'll bed at different places as the rut progresses, and they start traveling more and more in their home range. Without knowing where they're bedding, and without them coming to food, unless now you might have an acorn patch here, and a mature buck may be bedding 200 yards away, and you might know it or might not know it, and before the rut, he may walk in and get to that acorn patch with a white oak acorn strawman trees. He might get there before dark, but that is just a fluke in the big woods that you would have a setup like that and know where that deer is at.
We are back, Mission Whitetail. We've got Andy May on again.
Is that something that you do as like a drill, Andy, during the off season? Is try to shoot without stabilizers on, or shoot with one footed, anything like that to give you more pin movement?
I will. I don't really take my stabilizers off because I kind of want to just practice with the way I'm going to hunt it. But I do often put myself in like challenging positions to shoot, because that's kind of what I always find myself in some sort of challenging position or some sort of awkward position when I'm hunting. Sometimes, you're you're in the whitetail woods, you're in a hang on tree stand, and the deer comes in right to your left side, and it's, ideally just a sit down shot, and that's fine. But, when you're hunting from the saddle, sometimes you got to move a little more. Sometimes you're using a little more core stability. If you're on the ground, you might be, I've had to be at full draw and then squat down a little bit to make the shot under some cover. Or when you're out west in the mountains, you got kind of uneven footing. And when I think about a lot of my shot opportunities, they're never ever just flat foot perfectly, like you do in the backyard. They're always some sort of contortion or twist or something. So I'll do my tinkering and my testing on flat ground in the backyard, in my flip flops or whatever. But then once I figure out what is shooting the most forgiving and what I have the most confidence in, then I go to more like real life training mode, shooting from the roof, shooting from tree stands, shooting from a saddle, getting on a side hill, putting my one leg up on a rock or a stump and really challenging that. That's a great drill. The one-legged drill, standing on 1 foot, is a great drill to see if you're really focused on the right thing for a good shot execution, because that will rapidly move your pin. And if you do that and your pin's all over the place and you're like, stopping and going and trying to time it, well, it tells you right there that you're slapping the trigger and trying to time the release. But if you can just accept that movement and run a good shot execution, then, then you're focusing on the right thing. You're focused on actually executing a good shot and not worrying about what your pin's doing.
Yeah, and that's my problem. A lot of times I can't keep the release moving. Once I get on target, I'll get going. I'm like, okay. And then I lock up, and then it's like, okay, keep going. And then I lock up, and then finally, boom. And you're like, all right, I don't know if I can do that again. And then sometimes it's on the money, and other times I really got to talk myself through it. And maybe we should talk about that since
Let's go. Absolutely.
So, Andy, so when you're about to, you're at the moment of truth and you're about to take a shot on a mature buck or whatever, tell us step by step what you're saying in your head or what you practice in the backyard actually saying out loud. Like, because I know you have a process. I heard you talk about it on the Spartan Forge get together. I want to touch on that again, because that's what I'm really into, is getting over that hump.
Yeah. Well, I was in the same spot as you, back in like 2010, 2011, I was really struggling with, locking below the target and slapping the trigger. And I was dealing with target panic big time. Then I kind of identified what I was doing and worked through it, got the help I needed, and completely redesigned the way I shoot. And it's just been, now, like, I was really struggling back then to even enjoy archery because I was just screwing up so bad. My target panic got so bad. And then it made me fall in love with archery again once I was able to get through that and develop a good shot execution process. But to answer your question, when I actually come to full draw, like the deer standing there in the lane, I come to full draw and I'll draw the bow back, and then I just kind of naturally come to my anchor, touch my nose of the string, and then the way I describe it is I splash the pin right on the spot. It doesn't matter if I'm shooting at a deer or if I'm shooting at a little circle in the backyard. I splash it on there. And what that means is I immediately put the pin right on the spot. I don't creep up to it. I don't bring it in from the side or down. I splash it on that spot, and then I'll just say, settle. And basically what that tells me is just settle, just relax, and then I'll say aim. And then it's basically what I'm telling myself is I'm walking through myself through these steps. So I'll say settle, aim. And then as soon as I make the decision to aim and I'm ready to execute the shot, then I start saying pull, 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 pull. And basically what I'm doing is I'm telling myself to physically do the movement that I want to achieve, which is pulling through the shot. So I use a handheld, my thumb's on the trigger, and I'm pulling like this. This is exaggerated, but I'm pull, 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 pull until the shot goes off. So when I'm actually shooting at a deer, my thought process is very, very mechanical. I'm thinking of the actual physical things that I want to accomplish during that shot execution. And I'm not thinking about how big the deer is, or, I'm so nervous, or gosh, I hope I make this shot. I actually kind of remove myself from that just for a moment and focus on the mechanics of my shot. And if that, to me, it kind of takes the anxiety away. It takes the anxiety of the moment away. It takes the anxiety of my pin movement, the adrenaline and all that. And I'm just focusing on the mechanics of making a good shot, because if I can make a good shot here, in my person, make a good execution shot, the arrow's going to go where I want it to go.